Silence is not just the absence of noise. It's a force, a discipline, and a form of communication more powerful than words. In The Power of Silence, make everything flow in your favor. The author delves deep into how silence, when used deliberately, can become your strongest ally in relationships, business, personal growth, and mental clarity. This book isn't about withdrawing from the world. It's about mastering your energy, your presence, and your influence through purposeful stillness. Most people believe power comes from speaking, being heard, being loud, being assertive. But real power often resides in restraint. The person who can remain calm, composed, and observant in a world full of noise holds the advantage. When you don't rush to react or prove your point, you create space. That space attracts truth, reveals others' intentions, and allows you to act with precision. Silence gives you time, and time is control. One of the book's central ideas is that silence allows you to see beyond distractions. When you're quiet, mentally and emotionally, you notice more. You pick up on people's inconsistencies, on opportunities others miss. While others are busy reacting, you're analyzing, you're understanding, you're waiting for the right moment. And when you act, it's effective, because it's intentional. The book shows that silence builds mystery and magnetism. When you talk less, people lean in more. They want to know what you're thinking. They wonder about your confidence, your calmness. This intrigue makes you more powerful in both professional and social settings. Not revealing everything gives you leverage. It lets you lead the interaction without dominating it. People start to follow your energy rather than your words. Silence also helps you master your emotions. Life will always throw challenges your way, conflicts, insults, misunderstandings. Reacting emotionally only drains you and gives others power over your peace. But when you practice silence, you step back and observe. You choose not to let others disturb your inner balance. That quiet self-control sends a clear message. You're not easily shaken. You're grounded. And grounded people are respected, even by their enemies. A powerful takeaway from the book is that silence is not passive. It's strategic. It's about knowing when to speak, what to say, and how to say it with impact. Not every battle needs a response. Not every insult needs a comeback. Silence makes your words count more. People listen when you finally speak, because they know you don't waste energy on noise. You speak when it matters. The author explains that silence is also a tool for self-connection. In a noisy world where everyone is trying to be seen, heard, and validated, silence helps you return to yourself. It reconnects you with your intuition, your clarity, your vision. The more you practice silence, the more you discover about who you are, and the stronger your inner foundation becomes, the less dependent you are on external validation. You become whole, centered, and focused on what truly matters. In relationships, silence can reveal the truth more than words ever could. Sometimes, silence is the best response to manipulation, to disrespect, to immaturity. When someone expects you to chase, argue, or beg, and you respond with silence, it shifts the dynamic. It sets a boundary without needing to explain it. Your silence says, "I value my peace more than this drama." That's strength. That's self-worth in action. Another key lesson is that not everyone deserves access to your energy. Talking too much, explaining too much, arguing too much, it all leaks energy. Silence conserves it. The book encourages the reader to be selective. Don't share your plans with everyone. Don't react to every opinion. Let your results speak. Let your presence speak. Let your silence speak. The less people know, the less they can manipulate. But silence also works internally. It teaches you to quiet the mental noise, the doubt, the fear, the overthinking. When you sit with yourself in silence, you begin to separate truth from illusion. You realize how much of your anxiety comes from reacting to imaginary scenarios. You learn to be still, to trust, to listen to your inner voice. That's how clarity comes. That's how confidence grows, not from the outside world, but from within. The author doesn't promote arrogance or coldness. Silence isn't about shutting people out. It's about filtering what you allow in. It's about choosing peace over performance. It's about not giving everything your attention. It's the difference between responding and reacting, between power and impulse. You're not ignoring life, you're engaging with it more intelligently. And silence, when paired with discipline, becomes transformative. It sharpens your focus, amplifies your productivity, and trains you to delay gratification. While others are busy talking about their goals, you're quietly working on them. You stop seeking praise for every move. You stop broadcasting every step. Instead, you build in silence and let success be the noise. By the end of the book, you come to understand that silence is not emptiness. It's fullness contained. It's not weakness, it's refined strength. The quietest person in the room is often the most prepared, the most thoughtful, the most dangerous, because their moves are not obvious and their power is not loud. This book is a call to master your energy, to realize that you don't need to convince, explain or entertain in order to be powerful. That your presence alone, when anchored in silence, awareness and purpose, is enough. Everything doesn't need a reaction. Everything doesn't deserve your voice. Sometimes, the most powerful statement is made in silence. Ultimately, the power of silence is about taking back control of your life. Not by overpowering others, but by mastering yourself. In silence, you'll find answers. In silence, you'll discover clarity. In silence, you'll learn how to make everything flow in your favor. Not by force, but by alignment. Silence as a strategic power tool. Silence is often misunderstood in a world dominated by noise. People frequently associate silence with weakness, indecisiveness, or a lack of intelligence. But in truth, silence is one of the most powerful strategic tools a person can possess. It is deliberate. It is calculated. It is purposeful. While the world is busy trying to speak louder, explain more and rush to be heard, those who master silence operate on a different level entirely. They don't react to everything. They don't explain themselves at every turn. They know that silence can create space, space for understanding, space for power to shift, and space for truth to surface without interference. Silence creates mystery. When someone refuses to respond immediately, or doesn't jump into a conversation or confrontation, they instantly gain psychological control. The other party begins to wonder, what are they thinking? Why aren't they reacting? Are they angry? Are they confident? That uncertainty forces others to fill in the blanks with their own assumptions, often giving silent individuals more credit, more influence, and more respect than if they had spoken. It becomes an aura, a quiet presence that demands attention without begging for it. In high-stakes situations, such as negotiations, boardrooms, or even tense personal conversations, silence can be the edge that separates the powerful from the powerless. Power in its rawest form is about control. Control over self, over decisions, over outcomes, and silence gives you that control. When someone insults you and you remain silent, you rob them of their intended result, your emotional reaction. When someone pressures you for an answer and you take your time, you assert your right to respond on your own terms. When a situation escalates and you hold your ground in silence, you display composure that rattles others. This self-mastery doesn't come easily, but it's what sets apart those who react impulsively from those who rule quietly from within. In the dynamics of power, it's often not the loudest person who holds sway, it's the one who listens. Listening is an underappreciated skill, but it is strengthened through silence. The more you listen, the more you learn. People reveal themselves through what they say and how they say it. In silence, you can observe patterns, insecurities, and hidden intentions. While others are too busy trying to be heard, you're gathering intelligence. You're reading the room. You're noticing what's not being said. And this information becomes the foundation of powerful decision-making. Silence also prevents you from exposing your own weaknesses. When people speak too freely, they often overshare. They reveal plans, fears, and emotional vulnerabilities without realizing it. But when you practice silence, you retain the upper hand. You don't give away your strategy. You don't hand over your emotional state. You let others reveal themselves while you remain unreadable. This unspoken advantage allows you to move wisely, strike precisely, and stay 10 steps ahead. One of the most profound strengths of silence is its ability to de-escalate situations. In arguments or conflicts, the instinct is to fight back, to defend, to speak over the other person. But this only intensifies the chaos. Silence, by contrast, is a disarming force. It absorbs aggression without feeding it. It brings a moment of stillness where reflection can occur. Often, it causes the other person to run out of steam, to question their approach, or to become more open to resolution. Silence here is not passive surrender. It is a deliberate redirection of energy. It stops the fire from spreading. Many of history's most effective leaders understood the power of silence. They knew when to speak and when to remain quiet. Their silence created tension and commanded attention. It forced people to lean in, to anticipate, to respect the weight of their eventual words. When they did speak, every word carried impact. This didn't happen by accident. It was the result of knowing the value of withholding as much as expressing. In this way, silence becomes a multiplier of power, not a diminisher. There is also an element of psychological endurance in silence. When you are able to remain silent while others are desperate for a reaction, you demonstrate strength. You show that you are not easily manipulated. In relationships, business dealings, or conflicts, this strength becomes a shield. It protects your mind from being controlled by external forces. You train yourself to stay centered, to observe instead of engage, to wait instead of rush. This restraint is not weakness, it is strategy. The longer you can sit in silence, the more you realize that most things resolve themselves without your interference. Silence is particularly effective in moments of uncertainty. When people are unsure of what to do or how to proceed, the one who speaks first often reveals their position prematurely. But the silent individual waits. They allow others to expose their intention. They let the noise clear before stepping in with clarity and purpose. This approach often results in more favorable outcomes because decisions are made from observation, not emotion. When used consistently, silence builds a reputation. People start to notice that you don't respond to everything. They realize that when you do speak, it matters. This contrast between your silence and your speech creates gravity. It earns you respect. You're not seen as someone who talks just to be heard. You're seen as someone who means what they say. That reputation becomes its own form of influence. Another critical use of silence is in managing public perception. In a world obsessed with instant opinions and quick reactions, silence stands out. When people expect a comment and you offer none, your silence becomes the comment. It can communicate dignity, strength, or even strategic ambiguity. Leaders and public figures often use silence to let situations cool down, or to allow the public to project their own interpretations. This ambiguity can be incredibly powerful. It allows space for multiple narratives, while the silent individual remains above the noise. Even in close relationships, silence can be transformative. It teaches patience. It fosters deeper connection. When you listen in silence, you validate the other person's experience without needing to interject your own. It shows that you are present. And when conflicts arise, silence can say, "I won't argue. I won't match chaos with chaos. I choose peace over power struggle." That decision shifts the entire dynamic of the relationship. It turns tension into calm. It redirects attention inward, toward reflection and mutual understanding. Internally, silence becomes a space where thoughts settle. When you're constantly surrounded by noise, both external and internal, your mind has no room to breathe. But when you embrace silence intentionally, you clear space to think clearly. Your thoughts become sharper. Your ideas crystallize. You begin to distinguish between what truly matters and what's just background noise. This mental clarity gives you an edge in every area of life. It allows you to act with focus and purpose, not confusion and pressure. Strategic silence also teaches timing. In life, timing is everything. Knowing when to speak is just as important as knowing what to say. Silence allows you to wait for the right moment. It gives you space to prepare, to observe, to plan. When that moment arrives, your words are effective because they are timely. You're not rushing. You're not stumbling. You're moving with intention. That kind of communication leaves a lasting impression. In a fast-paced world, silence is also a protest. It's a rejection of urgency, of shallow noise, of meaningless chatter. It's a declaration that you don't have to participate in every conversation. You don't have to prove yourself in every moment. You don't have to match the volume of the world to have power in it. That decision makes you a grounded, focused, and highly strategic individual. Over time, silence sharpens your instinct. Because you're not constantly speaking or reacting, you become more in tune with your intuition. You begin to sense things before they happen. You start to read energy instead of words. You develop an inner compass that guides your actions, your speech, your decision. This intuition becomes your secret advantage, refined in silence, empowered through self-control. Mastering silence requires discipline. It's not easy to hold back when your ego wants to defend, when your emotions want to explode, when your mind wants to be heard. But every time you choose silence over impulse, you build strength. You gain experience. You learn that real power doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to convince. It simply is. Silence, as a strategic power tool, is not about staying silent forever. It's about knowing when silence serves you more than speech. It's about using silence as a weapon, a shield, a lens, and a foundation. It's about moving through the world with calm, clarity, and command. In a society addicted to noise, silence becomes your revolution. It becomes the space where you rise above the noise and make everything flow in your favor. Emotional discipline. Through silence. Emotional discipline is one of the rarest and most valuable forms of strength a person can possess. In a world that constantly encourages instant reaction, the ability to remain centered, calm, and in control of your emotions sets you apart. Silence is not merely the absence of speech. It is an act of discipline, a conscious choice to withhold your reaction, preserve your energy, and assert your power. Emotional discipline, through silence, means you do not allow external events, people's words, or momentary impulses to dictate your behavior. Instead, you train yourself to observe, reflect, and choose your response with intention. This kind of self-governance is not natural.
It is built over time, moment by moment, in the small decisions, where you choose silence over reaction, patience over anger, and presence over impulsivity. There is a deep intelligence in choosing silence when emotions are high. Most people speak to relieve pressure. They say things out of frustration, fear, or pain, without understanding the consequences of their words. When you allow yourself to vent in the heat of the moment, you may feel temporary relief, but you often create permanent damage. Silence gives you a space between stimulus and response, a space in which you can reclaim control over yourself. Instead of escalating a situation, you de-escalate it within yourself. You give your nervous system time to relax, your mind time to process, and your heart time to heal. Emotional discipline through silence is not suppression. It is management. It does not mean denying your emotions. It means honoring them by not letting them control you. Silence helps you see emotions for what they are. Temporary visitors, not permanent truths. Anger feels urgent. Sadness feels heavy. Fear feels overwhelming. But all of these emotions pass. When you practice silence, especially in moments of emotional intensity, you remind yourself that you are not your feelings. You are the observer. You are the one who can feel deeply and still remain grounded. This practice creates emotional resilience. It makes you less reactive and more responsive. You start to develop inner strength that does not depend on circumstances. The storms may come, but you are no longer thrown around by every wave. Emotional discipline through silence also makes your relationships healthier. When you are able to hold your tongue in a heated argument, or stay composed when someone tries to provoke you, you disrupt the usual pattern of conflict. Most arguments follow a script. One person says something triggering. The other reacts. Voices get louder. Tempers flare. And the issue becomes bigger than it needs to be. But when you insert silence into that script, you change the outcome. You refuse to escalate. You refuse to be baited. You choose peace over dominance. That silence becomes a mirror. The other person is forced to reflect on their behavior. Instead of focusing on yours, they are confronted with their own energy. And often that is enough to dissolve the tension. Silence in emotionally charged moments communicates strength. It says, I am not controlled by my anger. I am not ruled by my fear. I do not need to explain or defend myself to feel secure. That kind of presence is magnetic. People may not always understand it, but they respect it. Over time, your consistent calmness creates a new dynamic. People begin to approach you differently. They know that shouting will not provoke you. Manipulation will not move you. Drama will not reach you. Your silence becomes your boundary. It teaches people how to treat you without you needing to say a word. In moments of betrayal, heartbreak, or disappointment, silence becomes a sanctuary. When emotions are raw and pain is fresh, speaking can often reopen wounds. But when you sit in silence, you allow the pain to move through you. Without being magnified, you allow yourself to grieve, to process, to feel everything without interruption. This is how healing begins, not with noise, not with confrontation, but with stillness. Silence gives you space to reclaim your energy. It prevents you from begging for closure, from chasing answers, from trying to force understanding. You learn that you do not need others to validate your experience. You learn that your own inner peace is the only closure you truly need. Silence also teaches you the art of emotional detachment. Not detachment in the cold, indifferent sense, but in the wise, self-protective sense. You begin to understand that you are not obligated to participate in every emotional storm that passes your way. You are not required to absorb other people's chaos, insecurity, or projections. Through silence, you create emotional space. That space becomes a shield that allows you to respond from clarity rather than confusion. You see situations more objectively. You understand people's motivations more clearly. You start to recognize what belongs to you and what does not. This kind of clarity is only possible when silence becomes your habit, your default setting in emotionally unpredictable environment. When you consistently practice emotional discipline through silence, you begin to master timing. You learn when to speak and when to wait. You understand that some conversations are better had after the storm has passed. You know that some truths lose their power when spoken in anger. You realize that some problems solve themselves if you don't feed them. Timing becomes your ally. Silence allows you to wait for the right moment, the right tone, and the right mindset. When you finally speak, your words are intentional. They are not distorted by emotion. They are guided by wisdom, and because of that, they are heard more clearly and respected more deeply. Another benefit of emotional discipline through silence is self-respect. Every time you choose silence over impulsive reaction, you strengthen your self-worth. You prove to yourself that you can be trusted with your emotions. You no longer feel the need to lash out, to over-explain, or to win every argument. You realize that your value is not determined by how loudly you speak or how aggressively you defend yourself. Your value is inherent. It does not rise or fall based on how others treat you. This realization is liberating. It frees you from the need for external validation. It allows you to walk away from situations with your dignity intact. It empowers you to choose your peace over your pride. Practicing silence in emotional moments also sharpens your intuition. When the mind is quiet, the heart speaks more clearly. In silence, you start to sense what's right for you and what's not. You begin to pick up on energies, patterns, and red flags that you might have missed in the noise. This awareness becomes a guide. It helps you avoid unnecessary conflict. It shows you when to engage and when to let go. Emotional discipline becomes your compass, and silence becomes the stillness that allows you to hear it. One of the most powerful aspects of emotional discipline through silence is the self-trust it creates. When you know that you can hold yourself in difficult moments, you become unshakable. Life will always present challenges. People will disappoint you. Circumstances will shift. But when you've built emotional discipline, you stop reacting to life like a victim. You start responding to life like a creator. You no longer need to control everything outside of you, because you've mastered what's within you. That kind of inner stability is rare, and it's cultivated in silence.
Silence also allows you to break generational cycles. Many of us come from environments where yelling, reacting, and emotional chaos were the norm. But when you choose silence, you interrupt that pattern. You choose a new way. You show that emotional control is possible. You create a model for those around you. Your children, your friends, your colleagues. They begin to see that peace is not weakness, that stillness is not passivity, and that calm is not a lack of caring. It's a different kind of power, one that changes everything without force. In a world that often mistakes emotional expression for emotional strength, silence is countercultural. It doesn't seek to be understood. It seeks to understand. It doesn't aim to dominate. It aims to ground. This difference in approach is what makes it so powerful. Emotional discipline through silence is not about silencing your truth. It's about elevating it. It's about ensuring that when you do speak, your words come from your highest self, not your wounded self. There will be times when silence feels difficult, when your emotions are loud and demanding. In those moments, remind yourself that silence is not abandonment, it is alignment. It is the space where you return to yourself. It is the space where you choose your future over your feelings. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. And eventually you won't have to try so hard. Silence will become your strength. Emotional discipline will become your identity. You will move through life with grace, with clarity, and with unshakable confidence, not because you avoided emotions, but because you mastered them. And that, above all else, is the true power of silence. Silence as a filter for energy and attention. In a world that constantly demands your attention, your energy is your most valuable resource. Everything and everyone is vying for a piece of your mental space, from conversations to social media, advertisements, noise, conflict, and emotional distractions. Without discipline, your energy gets scattered, your focus fractured, and your sense of self diluted. This is where silence steps in, not as a passive state of doing nothing, but as an intentional filter that protects, refines, and channels your energy in the right direction. Silence is not an absence, but a force. It acts as a boundary that helps you distinguish between what truly matters and what is simply noise. When used intentionally, silence becomes a tool that clears mental clutter, centers your emotions, and aligns your actions with your deeper purpose. Silence allows you to observe what pulls at your energy without responding impulsively. In stillness, you begin to notice the patterns, the conversations that leave you drained, the people who always need something, the activities that consume time but add no value. Most people are unaware of how their energy is being leaked. They assume fatigue is physical, when more often than not, it's mental and emotional depletion caused by constant engagement with unnecessary stimulation. But when you practice silence, especially digital, verbal, and emotional silence, you create space to assess what you're giving your attention to and why. That reflection is essential because it helps you reclaim control. It makes you ask, is this worth my energy? Does this deserve my focus? Or am I reacting out of habit? Silence then becomes a protective layer. It shields your mind from the chaos outside. It creates a buffer between you and the demands of the world. In that space, you get to choose what enters your field of awareness. This is how you protect your mental peace, not by shutting out the world forever, but by creating intentional filters. You become more selective. You stop responding to everything instantly. You stop attending to things that do not align with your goals, values, or emotional well-being. That selectiveness is not arrogance, it's self-respect. It's the realization that your energy is currency, and not everything deserves to be purchased with your attention. In silence, your mind is no longer hijacked by constant input. You're not reacting to notifications, opinions, noise, or arguments. You're tuning in instead of tuning out. This tuning in reveals your real priorities. What rises in the quiet is what truly matters. It may be your health, your relationships, your creativity, or your inner peace. Whatever it is, silence helps you see it more clearly. That clarity becomes the foundation of your decision-making. It becomes easier to say no, because you know what you're saying yes to. You no longer get pulled into distractions disguised as opportunities. You learn to recognize energy traps, those tasks, people, or thoughts that seem urgent but are actually irrelevant. The more you filter them out, the more you reserve your strength for things that genuinely deserve it. There's also an emotional benefit to using silence as a filter. Emotions are contagious. If you're constantly around people who complain, criticize, or create conflict, their energy begins to affect you. But silence gives you the emotional distance to stay rooted in your own energy. It teaches you to observe without absorbing. You hear the complaint, but you don't carry it. You sense the anger, but you don't mirror it. You acknowledge the drama, but you don't enter it. This kind of emotional boundary is made possible by silence. It keeps you centered while the world around you is spinning. It allows you to be present without being pulled. That grounded presence not only protects your emotional state, it elevates it. Another way silence filters your energy is by exposing what's false. When you stop talking for the sake of filling space, you begin to notice when others are doing just that. You recognize empty conversations, surface-level engagements, and performative relationships. You begin to crave authenticity over noise. You start to value depth over volume. This shift helps you refine your social circle. You begin to distance yourself from people who drain your energy and move closer to those who nourish it. You stop seeking constant validation and start cultivating inner trust. This refinement process is painful at first, but it's necessary for growth. It's hard to let go of people or habits that once felt familiar, but silence shows you the difference between connection and obligation, and that awareness changes everything. One of the most practical aspects of using silence as a filter is its ability to improve your productivity. In silence, you can focus without fragmentation. You're not multitasking, scrolling, or reacting. You're present. You're immersed. This single-minded focus allows you to enter a flow state, a mental zone where your creativity, efficiency, and intuition are at their peak. In flow, work feels effortless, time disappears, results multiply. But flow is only possible in silence. It's only possible when distractions are removed and your attention is undivided. Silence, then, becomes the secret ingredient to high performance. Not because you're doing more, but because you're doing what matters most with full presence. Silence also helps you process information more deeply. When you're always consuming news, conversations, social media, you don't give your brain time to integrate what you've learned. But in silence, your mind digests information. It forms connections. It generates insights. You begin to see patterns and possibilities that weren't visible before. This depth of understanding is what separates wise decision-makers from impulsive ones. It's not that they know more, it's that they've filtered better. They've taken time in silence to understand, not just react. This deeper comprehension leads to better choices, clearer communication, and more impactful action. In silence, your intuition becomes louder. When you stop listening to external voices, you start hearing your inner one. That voice often knows what your logical mind can't yet explain. It guides you toward people, paths, and projects that resonate with your true self. But intuition is easily drowned out by noise. It requires silence to surface. That's why people often say they find clarity in nature, in solitude, in moments of stillness. It's not that silence gives them something new, it simply reveals what was already there. That revelation, however, can be life-changing. It can redirect your path, rekindle your purpose, and restore your alignment. Using silence as a filter also strengthens your boundaries. When you choose not to engage in gossip, arguments, or meaningless debates, you communicate your standards without saying a word. People begin to understand that your time and energy are not easily accessed, that you don't participate in low-vibration exchanges, that you value depth, presence, and purpose. These silent boundaries are often more powerful than verbal ones. They are consistent, quiet, and deeply felt, and because of that, they are rarely crossed. Over time, your silence builds a reputation. You're seen as someone who is thoughtful, intentional, and not easily shaken. That respect becomes a form of influence, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. Silence also reveals your relationship with yourself. Many people use noise to escape. They keep busy, talk constantly, or consume media to avoid facing their inner world. But silence strips away those distractions. It brings you face to face with your thoughts, your fears, your hopes, and your truth. This confrontation is not always comfortable, but it is necessary. It shows you where you're out of alignment. It highlights the parts of yourself you've ignored. And it invites you to come home to yourself. That inner reconnection becomes the source of your strength.
It makes you less dependent on external approval. It helps you make decisions from self-awareness, not self-abandonment.
There's also a spiritual element to silence as a filter. Many traditions, from Eastern meditation to Western monastic practices, emphasize the power of silence for spiritual clarity. In silence, the soul speaks. You begin to sense something greater than yourself. You feel connected to a deeper intelligence, a higher purpose, a timeless presence. That connection is not found in words. It's found in stillness, and it transforms your perspective. Problems that once felt overwhelming lose their grip. Goals that once seemed urgent lose their pressure. You begin to focus not just on achievement, but on alignment. You start to live from the inside out. Silence is not always easy. It will test you. It will bring up discomfort, boredom, even fear. But if you can sit through those moments without rushing to escape, you will discover treasures within yourself that noise could never offer. You will uncover clarity, calm, strength, and vision. You will realize that your most powerful decisions, insights, and breakthroughs often come not when you're talking or thinking, but when you're listening in silence. To use silence as a filter is to take full responsibility for your inner world. It is to say, I choose what enters my mind. I decide what deserves my energy. I will not give my attention away freely. That kind of ownership changes your life. It puts you back in the driver's seat. You no longer live in reaction to the world. You live in response to your truth. Every silent moment becomes a choice to protect your peace, a choice to preserve your power, a choice to stay focused on what truly matters. In a society obsessed with speed, noise, and visibility, silence is a quiet revolution. It is a radical act of self-respect. It is a return to essence. When you use silence as a filter, you stop being a prisoner of distraction. You become a master of presence. And in that presence, you find the clarity, direction, and peace that no amount of noise can ever give you. Building magnetic presence through mystery. In a world where everyone is trying to be seen, heard, and constantly validated, there's something uniquely powerful about the person who holds back. The person who doesn't rush to explain, overshare, or always take center stage. That individual who remains calm, observant, and mysterious often becomes the most magnetic in the room. This magnetic presence doesn't come from what they say or do. It comes from what they choose not to reveal. Mystery, when used with self-awareness and emotional control, creates a strong gravitational pull. People are naturally drawn to what they can't fully understand. Mystery invites curiosity, and curiosity is the beginning of attention. When you use silence to create mystery, you cultivate a presence that speaks volumes without words, influences without pressure, and leaves a lasting impression that louder personalities often can't match. Mystery is not about manipulation or being evasive. It's about being intentional with your energy and information. It's about understanding the difference between being known and being exposed. Too often people believe that being open means revealing everything. They confuse transparency with overexposure. But in reality, mystery is a form of respect, both for yourself and others. It signals that you value your privacy, your thoughts, and your emotional world enough not to hand them out freely. This self-containment doesn't push people away. It draws them in. It makes them wonder what lies beneath the surface, what your story might be, what you're thinking, and that wondering creates depth in the interaction. It creates a silent dialogue before a word is even spoken. The power of mystery lies in what it activates in others. When you don't immediately reveal all of yourself, you allow others to engage their imagination. You become someone they want to know more about, not someone they've already figured out. This space creates intrigue. And intrigue is far more powerful than attention. Attention is easy to get in today's world. People perform for it all the time. But intrigue is different. It requires depth, restraint, and control. It requires you to be centered enough in yourself that you don't need to be seen constantly to feel validated. That internal security is what gives rise to true magnetic presence. You become someone who doesn't chase attention, but commands it by your stillness, your composure, and your mystery. Silence is the key ingredient in this dynamic. When you speak less, you force others to listen more closely. Your words carry more weight because they are not diluted by excess. Your expressions, your pauses, your energy all begin to communicate what language cannot. This kind of presence is subtle but undeniable. People may not even understand why they're drawn to you, but they are. They feel your depth. They sense your self-possession. In a world full of oversharers, you become the exception, the one who leaves room for imagination. That space you create is where your power grows. Mystery also gives you control over perception. When you don't always speak, explain, or react, others are left to interpret your silence. And more often than not, they interpret it in a way that reflects their own desires, projections, and assumptions. This can work in your favor if your silence is rooted in strength. People may see confidence, wisdom, or discipline simply because you didn't rush to speak. Your restraint becomes a canvas onto which others project value. But this only works if your silence is authentic. If it comes from emotional regulation and self-respect, not insecurity or avoidance. True mystery is not silence for silence sake. It's silence with purpose. It's a quiet that communicates, I don't need to prove anything, I am comfortable in my presence. This kind of presence is especially powerful in relationships, romantic, professional, or social. In dating, for instance, people often feel pressure to impress, to talk constantly, to fill every gap with words. But mystery works differently. When you don't reveal everything about yourself too quickly, you maintain a sense of allure, you allow attraction to build over time, you let curiosity do the work. You give the other person space to pursue understanding, which deepens their investment. In professional settings, mystery can signal competence. A person who doesn't oversell themselves, but delivers results quietly, earns long-term respect. Their silence is interpreted as focus. Their restraint becomes professionalism. They are seen as someone with depth, someone who doesn't rely on performance but presence. Mystery also protects your energy. When you don't feel obligated to explain your every move, decision, or emotion, you preserve power. You stop leaking your energy in the form of unnecessary communication. You don't reveal your strategies too soon. You don't share your vulnerabilities with people who haven't earned your trust. This kind of emotional boundary doesn't make you cold. It makes you wise. It ensures that your inner world remains sacred, not open to anyone who asks. The more selective you are with what you share, the more people will value what you do choose to reveal. That scarcity increases value. When something is rare, it is appreciated more. Your presence becomes a rare energy, and people sense that. Mystery also cultivates patience. You no longer rush to fill silence or force outcomes. You're willing to let things unfold. You understand that not everything needs to be said, that not every moment requires explanation, that silence can be more impactful than speech. This patience makes you more strategic. You're not moved by impulse. You wait. You observe. You collect information without revealing your hand. This approach gives you a long-term advantage. You see things others miss. You catch subtle cues. You read energy, and because you're not emotionally reactive, you respond with clarity and purpose. That level of presence is powerful because it's rare. Building magnetic presence through mystery also requires that you know yourself deeply. You can't be magnetic if you are disconnected from your own essence. Silence helps you connect with that essence.
It clears the noise, so you can hear your inner voice. When you spend time in solitude, away from constant conversation and performance, you start to understand what truly matters to you. You gain insight into your own needs, values and motivations. That self-awareness becomes the foundation of your confidence. It's what allows you to be quiet without feeling insecure. You know who you are, so you don't need to explain it to everyone else. That inner knowing becomes visible, even in silence. There's also a spiritual quality to mystery. When you remain silent, you allow something deeper to speak through you. You become a vessel for insight, not just information. Your presence begins to feel grounded, wise, even healing. People are drawn to that kind of energy. They feel safe around you. Not because you say the right things, but because your energy is stable. You stopped trying to perform and started to simply be. This level of authenticity is magnetic, because it's rare. Most people are trying so hard to be something, but when you rest in who you already are, without needing to display it, you radiate a different frequency. That frequency attracts effortlessly. Mystery also invites people to reveal more of themselves. When you don't dominate conversations, or try to impress, others feel space to open up. They feel heard. They feel seen. Your silence becomes an invitation for them to step forward. This dynamic builds connection without effort. You're not pushing, you're allowing, and that allowance creates trust. People begin to value your presence because of how it makes them feel. They don't always remember what you said, but they remember the energy you brought. That energy is a reflection of your mystery. It's a reflection of the silence you've cultivated within. In romantic dynamics, mystery often creates polarity. When one person is grounded in silence and self-possession, it activates a natural attraction in the other. There's a dance between what is known and what is still unknown. That dance creates tension, the kind that deepens connection, not disrupts it. But this only works when the mystery is real. It cannot be forced or faked. It must come from a place of true emotional mastery. You must be genuinely comfortable not being understood, not being praised, not being decoded. That comfort is what turns mystery into magnetism. Mystery also gives you longevity. In a world where attention spans are short and people burn out from overexposure, mystery allows you to remain relevant. Because you're not always in the spotlight, you don't exhaust your presence. Because you don't reveal everything at once, people stay curious. You're not consumed quickly and discarded. You're appreciated slowly, over time. This gives you lasting influence. You don't peak quickly. You evolve gradually. Your presence ages well because it is rooted in substance, not performance. Using silence to build magnetic presence through mystery is not about withdrawing from life. It's about participating with intention. It's about knowing when to speak and when to hold, when to reveal and when to protect, when to lead with words and when to lead with energy. This discernment turns ordinary people into unforgettable ones. It turns a simple conversation into a lasting memory. It turns a quiet presence into a powerful force. Ultimately, mystery is about mastering your relationship with the unknown, both within yourself and in how others see you. It's about being okay with not being fully understood. It's about allowing your presence to be felt, not just your voice to be heard. That kind of presence is magnetic, not because it seeks attention, but because it honors depth. And in a world that constantly craves stimulation, the one who radiates stillness becomes unforgettable. Using silence to listen and understand more deeply. In a culture where speed and noise dominate, listening has become a lost art. Conversations have turned into competitions, and people often speak, not to understand, but to respond, argue or assert. In the midst of this constant back and forth, Silence is often mistaken for weakness or disinterest, but in reality, silence, when used deliberately, can be the most powerful communication tool available. It creates the space necessary for real understanding to occur. Silence slows down the noise, removes the clutter, and allows the heart of communication to rise to the surface. It's not merely the absence of speech, but the presence of awareness. It allows us to listen, not just to words, but to tone, body language, hesitation, and energy. Through silence, we become better observers, more compassionate humans, and far more effective communicators. Listening with silence begins by resisting the urge to interrupt. When someone is speaking, most people are already formulating their response, preparing to insert their opinion or advice. In doing so, they are no longer present. The speaker can sense that communication becomes surface level, disconnected, and performative. But when you listen in silence, without the intention to control or redirect the conversation, you signal something rare, genuine presence. The speaker feels heard in a way that's increasingly uncommon. They relax, they open up, they begin to reveal what's really on their mind, often going beyond their rehearsed words. Your silence creates a container for their truth to emerge. And in that space, connection is born. This kind of listening requires humility. It means acknowledging that you don't know everything, that you may be missing context, that your perspective is limited. Silence helps you remember that understanding is more important than being right. It prevents knee-jerk reaction. It gives you time to process, not just what was said, but what it meant. This deeper processing allows you to respond with clarity, instead of reacting with emotion. And that kind of response is infinitely more powerful. It brings peace instead of conflict, progress instead of resistance. Silence allows your thoughts to mature before they become words. In emotionally charged situations, silence can be a stabilizer. When people argue, emotions escalate, words get louder, faster, more defensive. But if even one person remains quiet, grounded, and still, the energy shifts. The silence becomes a mirror. The other person begins to hear themselves more clearly. Sometimes, they even correct themselves without you needing to say a word. Your silence isn't passive, it's active containment. You're choosing not to add more heat to the fire. You're allowing space for de-escalation. And in that space, people often begin to calm down, reflect, and listen. Conflict transforms when one person brings silence into it with strength.
Silence also helps you read between the lines. Words only reveal part of the story. Much of communication is non-verbal. The pause before a sentence, the tremble in a voice, the shift in eye contact. These small signals reveal volumes, but you can't notice them if you're focused on speaking. Silence puts you in observation mode. It helps you notice what's not being said. It helps you understand what someone is trying but struggling to express. Maybe they're afraid, maybe they're unsure, maybe they need time. When you listen in silence, you don't force the truth out of someone, you allow it to unfold naturally. And because of that, the truth that does emerge is often more authentic, more nuanced, and more healing. There's a kind of wisdom that arises only in silence. When you're not talking, your brain has space to connect ideas, make associations, and reflect on patterns. You begin to notice how often people repeat themselves, where their emotions spike, what topics make them light up or shut down. You become a detective of human behavior, but not in a manipulative way, in a compassionate, insightful way. This awareness can transform your relationships. It allows you to speak directly to someone's deeper needs, instead of reacting to their surface behavior. It allows you to ask better questions. It makes people feel seen in a way that very few ever experience. Silence is also a powerful tool for learning. Whether you're in a meeting, a lecture, or simply talking to someone more experienced, your silence signals openness. It shows that you're here to receive, not to impress. This receptivity builds trust. People are more likely to share knowledge, offer mentorship, or open up when they feel they are being genuinely listened to. You begin to attract wisdom, not because you ask for it, but because you create space for it. And the more you learn through silence, the more you grow in insight, skill, and character. In leadership, silence is a mark of emotional intelligence. Leaders who talk over others, dominate meetings, or always have the last word may appear confident, but often they are driven by insecurity. True leadership is shown through the ability to listen deeply and speak wisely. Silence allows a leader to hear what's really going on in a team, the frustrations, the potential, the unspoken conflicts. It also models behavior. When a leader listens in silence, it gives others permission to do the same. It creates a culture where people feel valued, not just managed. And when people feel heard, they work with more commitment and creativity. Silence can also serve as a form of feedback. Sometimes you don't need to tell someone they've said too much, crossed a line, or missed the point. Your silence does it for you. It causes them to pause, reflect, and reconsider. This unspoken feedback can be more powerful than any critique. It's subtle but firm. It's non-judgmental but clear. And because it's not confrontational, it's more likely to be received. Your silence becomes a mirror. It gives people the rare opportunity to see themselves. Listening in silence also deepens your self-awareness. As you become better at noticing others, you also start noticing your own reactions, assumptions, and triggers. You begin to hear your inner voice more clearly. You start asking yourself why you feel the need to speak, interrupt, defend, or control. This inner listening is essential for growth. It helps you unlearn patterns that no longer serve you. It helps you develop emotional discipline. It helps you stay grounded in difficult situations. And it allows you to communicate from a place of alignment rather than reactivity. One of the greatest benefits of using silence to listen is that it builds trust. When people feel truly heard, they begin to trust you. They open up more. They become more honest. They begin to feel emotionally safe around you. This kind of trust is not built through clever words or grand gestures. It's built through presence. When you listen in silence, you say, without speaking, you matter, your thoughts matter, your feelings matter. That unspoken message is powerful. It can heal wounds, strengthen bonds, and create lifelong loyalty. Silence also teaches patience. Not everything needs an immediate answer. Not every silence needs to be filled. Sometimes the best thing you can do is wait. Give the other person space to finish their thought. Give yourself space to digest what was said. Give the conversation space to breathe. In that space, something deeper often emerges, an insight, an emotion, a truth that would have been missed in a rush. Silence is the pause that brings depth. In parenting, silence can be transformative. Children, like adults, don't always say what they mean. Sometimes their behavior is a cry for attention, reassurance, or understanding. When a parent responds with silence, not cold silence, but attentive silence, they give the child space to express themselves more fully. They model calmness. They show that not every situation needs a loud reaction. Over time, this teaches the child emotional regulation. It teaches them that it's safe to speak, and equally okay to be quiet. This kind of balanced communication builds a deeper bond between parent and child. Even in moments of grief or pain, silence can be the greatest comfort. Words often fall short. Attempts to fix, advise, or explain can feel hollow, but a silent presence, a hand held, a gaze shared, a still companionship can say more than 1,000 well-meaning phrases. Silence becomes empathy. It says, I'm here with you. I may not have answers, but I'm not leaving. That kind of listening is not about solving anything. It's about honoring the moment, honoring the emotion, and often that's all that's needed. In spiritual practice, silence is sacred. Whether in meditation, prayer, or solitude, silence opens the door to deeper understanding. You begin to hear not just your thoughts, but the silence beneath your thoughts. You begin to listen, not just to others, but to life itself. The wind, the breath, the heartbeat, these simple things become more vivid. You begin to experience presence, and in that presence, clarity. Listening in silence becomes a form of communion with yourself, with others, and with something greater than both. It's no longer about getting answers. It's about entering a deeper state of being. The discipline of using silence to listen and understand more deeply is not easy. It requires intention, self-awareness, and restraint. It requires you to let go of the need to dominate, impress, or control. But the rewards are immense. Your relationships improve, your understanding deepens, your communication becomes more impactful, and most importantly, your connection to yourself and others becomes more authentic. In a noisy world, the one who listens in silence holds the true power, not the power to control, but the power to connect, not the power to speak the most, but to say what matters most. Through silence, you learn to listen, and through listening, you learn to love, lead, heal, and grow in ways that noise can never teach. Silence in conflict, winning without fighting. In moments of conflict, the instinct to speak, argue, and defend can feel overwhelming. Most people believe that the louder or quicker they respond, the stronger their position will seem. There's a cultural belief that being silent in conflict is equivalent to surrendering or being weak, but that belief is deeply flawed. Silence, when used wisely and intentionally, is not a form of giving up, it's a form of power. It is the art of winning without fighting. When everyone else is driven by emotion, tension, and urgency, the one who holds silence maintains control, clarity, and composure. In the chaos of conflict, silence is not absence, it is presence elevated to its highest form. Choosing silence in conflict is a conscious decision. It is not about suppressing thoughts or bottling up emotions, but about creating space between reaction and response. Most conflicts escalate because people react immediately, without reflection. They feel threatened, so they attack. They feel misunderstood, so they over-explain. They feel judged, so they justify. But in doing so, they lose their center. Their words become impulsive rather than intentional. Silence breaks that cycle. It is a pause that prevents escalation. It is the quiet that allows for a shift in energy. By choosing not to speak in the heat of the moment, you remove fuel from the fire. This does not mean you avoid conflict altogether or that you allow disrespect to go unchecked. It means you understand that timing is everything. Not every battle needs to be fought right away. Some words are more powerful when delivered later, after emotions have cooled, after perspective has returned, after you've had the time to decide what outcome you actually want. Silence allows you to separate emotion from intention. It gives you the power to observe, to assess, and to decide your next move without being clouded by anger or fear. This strategic stillness often shifts the balance of power in your favor, without needing to raise your voice or even speak a word. Silence is also a signal. In conflict, people expect resistance. They expect pushback. When they don't get it, they're often disarmed. Your silence forces the other person to confront their own words and behavior. Without your immediate reaction, they are left to sit with what they just said. This can lead to self-reflection. It can cause them to question their own assumption. Your silence acts as a mirror, showing them the weight of their own words. And in many cases, that reflection speaks louder than any argument could. There is a psychological advantage to remaining silent in conflict. It demonstrates self-mastery. While others are pulled by emotional currents, you remain anchored. This calm energy is not just felt, it is respected. People may not always agree with you, but they will take note of your composure.
They will recognize that you are not easily provoked. That recognition alone can change the dynamic of any interaction. It earns trust, it signals strength, and it often earns you the authority that people who rely on noise and dominance cannot maintain. In relationships, whether romantic, familial, or professional, conflicts are inevitable, but the way you handle them determines the longevity and quality of those relationships. Silence can create the space needed to understand what the conflict is truly about. Often, what people argue about on the surface is not the real issue. There are deeper fears, unmet needs, past wounds driving the intensity. If you jump into defending yourself or trying to win, you miss the opportunity to actually resolve anything. But if you hold silence, not in avoidance, but in awareness, you give yourself the chance to see what's underneath. You listen not just to what's being said, but to what's being felt. You respond to the emotional truth, not just the verbal noise. In high-stakes situations, silence becomes a negotiation tactic. In business, legal matters, or leadership, saying less can often yield more. When you speak too quickly, you reveal your hand, you give away leverage, you expose your fears and desires. But when you remain quiet, you make others wonder. They don't know what you're thinking, and that uncertainty gives you power. It forces them to fill in the gaps, to second-guess their approach. Strategic silence causes discomfort, but that discomfort is not your burden. It is theirs to carry, and it shifts the psychological dynamic in your favor. Silence also protects your reputation. In moments of conflict, especially public ones, your response becomes part of your image. If you lash out, if you say something impulsive, if you let your emotions lead, you may win the moment, but lose the long game. Silence keeps you from making permanent statements based on temporary feelings. It shields you from saying things you can't take back. And sometimes, the most powerful way to show confidence is to say nothing at all. People will remember your restraint. They will respect your discipline, and they will understand that your silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. There is also a healing power in silence. Not all conflicts need to be solved with words. Sometimes the best way to rebuild trust or restore peace is to stop talking, to sit in silence with someone, to let the energy set, to show through your presence, not your arguments, that you are still there, still willing to move forward, still holding space. Silence can communicate care. It can soften edges. It can remind others that connection matters more than being right. In these moments, silence becomes a bridge, not a barrier. In family dynamics, where conflicts are often layered with history and emotion, silence helps break generational patterns. Instead of repeating the loud reactions you may have grown up with, you can choose stillness. You can show that there is another way, that you can feel hurt without shouting, feel disappointed without blaming, feel passionate without overpowering. This shift can change the energy in a household. It can teach children emotional intelligence. It can bring new life into old relationships. And it all starts with the courage to hold silence when your instincts scream otherwise. Even within yourself, silence is a teacher in conflict. When you don't respond immediately, you get to hear your own inner dialogue more clearly. You begin to notice your triggers. You start to question why a certain word or action made you so angry. You examine whether the fight is really about the present moment, or if it's tied to past pain. This internal listening brings clarity. It gives you the emotional maturity to take responsibility for your reaction. And that kind of accountability doesn't weaken you. It makes you unshakable. Of course, not all silence is powerful. Silence rooted in fear, avoidance, or emotional shutdown is not the same as silence rooted in strength. The key is intention. Are you being silent to hide or to heal, to punish or to process, to manipulate or to master yourself? Intentional silence comes from a place of clarity. It's not about withholding. It's about choosing. It's the difference between being quiet because you're afraid and being quiet because you're wise. When practiced consistently, silence in conflict becomes a kind of emotional discipline. It trains you to stay grounded, no matter what chaos is around you. It teaches you how to manage your energy. You stop reacting to every provocation. You stop wasting your power on people or situations that don't deserve it. You learn to pick your battles carefully, speak only when it serves a purpose, and walk away when peace is more valuable than winning. Using silence to win without fighting doesn't mean you never speak up. It means you speak when it matters most. Your words are chosen, not triggered. They are few, but they carry weight. People begin to listen when you talk, precisely because they know you don't talk just to talk. Your silence has built a reputation, and in that reputation lies influence. In today's hyperverbal world, silence is a revolutionary act. It contradicts the noise. It disrupts the usual patterns. It offers something rare and powerful, stillness in the storm, and that stillness gives you clarity, strength, and control. You are no longer pulled into drama, no longer baited by provocation, no longer defined by temporary battles. You become strategic, intentional, focused. You learn that the real victory isn't in winning every argument, it's in mastering yourself.
When you use silence wisely, you are never truly silent. Your energy speaks. Your presence speaks. Your restraint speaks. You begin to realize that not every fight deserves your voice. Not every disagreement needs your explanation, and not every challenge requires your reaction. You learn to observe instead of absorb. You learn to move without noise. You learn to win without fighting. And in doing so, you embody a level of power that is both rare and deeply respected. The inner silence, overcoming anxiety, fear, and overthinking. In a world where distractions are endless and external demands pull us in every direction, the greatest battles we face often happen within our own minds. Anxiety, fear, and overthinking have become the default states of modern living. People wake up already stressed, their thoughts racing before their feet touch the ground. The mind replays conversations, anticipates problems, magnifies failures, and imagines worst-case scenarios with brutal creativity. These patterns are exhausting, yet they feel inescapable. What makes it worse is the belief that thinking more will somehow solve the problem. But more thinking only adds more noise. The true antidote lies not in doing more, but in being still. Inner silence is not a passive state of emptiness. It is a living, vibrant space where clarity, peace, and strength reside. It is the space where healing begins and where fear loses its grip. To understand the power of inner silence, one must first recognize how deeply noise has infiltrated the mind. Much of what we call thinking is not productive reflection, but compulsive rumination. It's a loop, an endless cycle of what-ifs, should-haves, and imagined disasters. This mental noise crowds out peace. It hijacks the nervous system, triggering stress hormones and tightening the body. Even when there's no real danger, the body reacts as if there is. This is the cost of overthinking. It turns imagined problems into felt pain. Silence interrupts that loop. When you pause and let go of the need to control every thought, you open the door to a deeper intelligence, one that exists beneath the mind's chatter. Inner silence is not the absence of thought, but the presence of awareness. It's the space in which thoughts arise, but no longer dominate. It's the ability to witness the mind without becoming entangled in it. Most people identify with their thoughts. They believe that whatever the mind says must be true. But thoughts are not truths. They are temporary mental events. They come and go like clouds in the sky. Inner silence is the sky. It is vast, unchanging, and untouched by passing clouds. The more one practices accessing that inner stillness, the less control fear and anxiety have. The mind may still generate fearful thoughts, but they no longer control the body or dictate behavior. Cultivating inner silence begins with attention. The breath becomes a doorway. Inhale slowly, exhale even slower. As the breath deepens, so does awareness. The present moment becomes more vivid. Sounds become clearer. The heartbeat becomes noticeable. In this simplicity, the mind starts to settle. It doesn't need to be forced or silenced aggressively. That would only create more tension. Instead, it needs to be witnessed with compassion and patience. When a fearful thought arises, notice it. Don't fight it. Don't follow it. Just observe. This non-reactive awareness is the essence of inner silence. It creates space between stimulus and response. And in that space there is freedom. Anxiety thrives on imagined futures. It pulls attention away from the now and into a realm of hypotheticals. What if I fail? What if they judge me? What if things never get better? These thoughts feel urgent and compelling, but they are shadows. They are predictions, not reality. Silence calls you back to what is real. It anchors you in the body, in the senses, in the breath. It reminds you that right now, you are safe. Right now, you are breathing. Right now, you have the power to choose your next thought, your next action. This presence cuts through the fog of fear, like sunlight through mist. Overthinking is the cousin of anxiety. It disguises itself as productivity, as responsibility, even as intelligence. But its true nature is paralysis. The more you think about a decision, the harder it becomes to make. The more you analyze a situation, the more confused you become. Silence simplifies. It reveals what actually matters. It helps you distinguish between helpful thought and habitual noise. In silence, answers emerge not through effort, but through stillness. You don't chase clarity. It finds you. The decision you've been wrestling with for days can become clear in one moment of deep silence. That is the power of aligning with your inner self instead of arguing with your mind. Fear loses its grip when you stop feeding it attention. Fear survives on anticipation and imagination. It needs a story to grow. Inner silence removes the story. It grounds you in direct experience. In silence, you can feel the fear in your body, the tight chest, the racing heart, the shallow breath. But you can also see that these sensations come and go. They are not who you are. They are not permanent. When you stop resisting them and start witnessing them, something powerful happens. They begin to dissolve. The act of witnessing transforms. Silence is not an escape from fear. It is the space in which fear is seen, accepted, and ultimately transcended. Inner silence also teaches you that not every thought deserves your engagement. The mind will offer countless opinions, judgments, and catastrophes. You don't have to believe any of them. You don't even have to argue with them. You can simply watch them. Like standing on the bank of a river, you see each thought float by without jumping in. This discipline creates emotional resilience. You become less reactive, more stable. Life can throw challenges your way, but you no longer spiral. You remain centered, rooted in silence, and from that center, you respond with wisdom, rather than fear. Practicing inner silence does not mean isolating yourself from the world. It means carrying stillness with you into the noise, whether in a busy workplace, a chaotic household, or a crowded street. Silence can be accessed within. It becomes a refuge, a sanctuary you carry everywhere. With time, this inner calm influences how you speak, how you walk, how you interact. People will feel it. Your energy changes. You become less hurried, less agitated, less reactive. And in a world addicted to noise, your presence becomes magnetic, not because you are louder, but because you are anchored. True inner silence also reconnects you with your intuition. In the noise of overthinking, intuition is drowned out, but in silence, it whispers clearly. It's not emotional or dramatic. It's quiet, firm, and deeply knowing. It might say, "This isn't right for you," or "Wait a little longer," or "Take that chance." These messages come not from fear or logic, but from a deeper place. When you learn to listen, you begin to move through life with more ease and alignment. You make better choices, not because you thought harder, but because you listened deeper. Healing also accelerates in silence. Emotional wounds often linger, not because the pain is too deep, but because the mind keeps replaying it. Silence breaks the loop. It brings you back to the body, to the breath, to the now. In this space, pain is felt, but not exaggerated. It is held gently, without judgment, and in that holding, it begins to release. What couldn't be solved through thought begins to dissolve through presence. Silence heals, not by fixing, but by accepting.
It allows what is buried to rise, to be seen, to be integrated. For those struggling with sleeplessness, restlessness, or chronic tension, inner silence is medicine. The body responds to the mind's stillness, muscles soften, the heart rate slows, the breath deepens. It's not about forcing relaxation. It's about removing the mental noise that prevents it. Just a few minutes of intentional silence before sleep can change the quality of your rest. Over time, this practice becomes a way of living. You begin to organize your day, not around stress, but around peace. You prioritize stillness, not as an escape but as a foundation. Inner silence does not eliminate challenge, pain, or uncertainty. Life will continue to be unpredictable, but silence changes your relationship with these things. You stop trying to control everything. You stop resisting what you cannot change. You learn to flow, to adapt, to remain steady. Fear may still knock on the door, but it no longer lives inside you. Anxiety may still whisper, but it no longer controls your choices. Overthinking may still arise, but it no longer paralyzes you. This is not the absence of difficulty. It is the presence of mastery. You begin to trust yourself, not the anxious mind, but the deeper self that silence reveals. That self is calm, grounded and wise. It is not swayed by opinion or overwhelmed by possibility. It knows what matters. It knows how to wait. It knows when to act, and it guides you with quiet strength. This self has always been there, beneath the noise. Silence simply brings it to the surface. In a noisy world, the one who finds inner silence finds freedom, not just the freedom from anxiety, fear and overthinking, but the freedom to live fully, to love deeply, and to move through life with clarity and courage. This silence is not a luxury. It is a necessity, and it is available to anyone willing to stop, breathe, and listen with it. Silence in relationships, setting boundaries without drama. In relationships, whether romantic, familial, professional, or social, communication is often seen as the key to connection. People are told to express themselves, explain their feelings, and talk through problems. While open communication is undoubtedly important, what's often overlooked is the immense power of silence. Silence in relationships isn't about shutting people out or avoiding difficult conversations. It's about knowing when words are unnecessary and when stillness speaks more effectively. One of the most profound uses of silence is in the art of setting boundaries. Unlike loud confrontations or drawn-out explanations, silence can establish clear limits with grace, dignity and strength. It sets a tone of calm authority that commands respect without creating unnecessary drama. Boundaries are essential to healthy relationships. They define where one person ends and another begins. Without them, people feel overwhelmed, disrespected, and emotionally drained. Yet many struggle to set boundaries because they fear conflict, rejection, or being seen as unkind. They over-explain, justify, or soften their limits in an attempt to please others. But this only leads to confusion and resentment. Silence offers a different approach. It allows boundaries to be communicated, not just through words, but through energy, behavior and non-reaction. When someone crosses a line, your silence, if rooted in self-respect, can be more powerful than any argument. There's a unique clarity in silence. When someone pushes your boundaries, and you respond not with anger, but with calm withdrawal, you send a clear message. You are not available for disrespect. You are not going to entertain manipulation, guilt-tripping, or emotional games. You are no longer reacting. You are responding with presence and awareness. This silence is not coldness. It's strength. It's the refusal to be pulled into chaos. It's a declaration of self-worth that doesn't need to be shouted. Over time, this kind of silence builds a reputation. People learn that your energy has boundaries, that your attention is earned, and that your presence is not guaranteed when respect is lacking. In relationships, silence also gives space for others to reflect. When you stop explaining yourself repeatedly, or defending your decisions endlessly, you allow the other person to sit with their behavior. If someone hurts you and you respond with calm distance rather than emotional explosion, they're forced to examine their own action. They may not change right away, but your silence disrupts the pattern. It denies them the usual emotional back and forth. It removes the fuel from their fire, and in that space, growth becomes possible. Not just for them, but for you. There is a difference between silent punishment and empowered silence. Silent punishment is manipulative. It's meant to hurt, to shame, or to control. Empowered silence, on the other hand, is a conscious choice to prioritize peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and strength over emotional reactivity. It's not about proving a point. It's about protecting your energy. When you stop responding to disrespectful behavior with arguments or pleading, you stop enabling it. You stop teaching people that you'll always be available for drama. You begin to reclaim your power. Silence also allows you to hear your own inner voice more clearly. When you're constantly explaining yourself or reacting to others, it becomes difficult to hear what you actually need or feel. Silence reconnects you with your intuition. It helps you discern whether a relationship is healthy, whether a pattern is worth continuing, and whether your boundaries are being honored. This internal awareness is crucial. Without it, you end up tolerating situations that drain you, simply because you've never paused long enough to reflect. Silence gives you that pause. It creates the space necessary for honest self-evaluation. In close relationships, silence can be used to reset the emotional climate. When arguments escalate and emotions run high, stepping back and choosing silence creates a break in the intensity. It signals that you are not available for toxicity, that you are willing to talk, but only when calm has returned. This kind of silence is a form of emotional regulation. It prevents words from becoming weapons. It reduces the chances of saying things you can't take back. It models maturity, and often it invites the other person to meet you at a higher level of emotional responsibility. Boundaries don't always need to be announced loudly. Sometimes they are best demonstrated through consistent action. If someone constantly interrupts your time, silence can be the refusal to answer immediately. If someone uses sarcasm to mask disrespect, silence can be the choice to not engage or If someone is trying to provoke a reaction, silence can be the calm withdrawal that makes it clear you won't play that game. These quiet actions speak volumes. They train others how to treat you, not because you told them, but because you showed them. Of course, silence must be balanced with communication. There are times when you must speak, when a boundary needs to be clearly articulated, when a misunderstanding must be clarified, when a relationship must be redefined. But even in those moments, silence can be your ally. It allows you to listen first, to choose your words wisely, and to speak with precision. It keeps you from saying too much. Often the most effective boundary-setting statements are the simplest. That doesn't work for me. I need some space. I'm not comfortable with that. No explanation needed. Your tone, your calm, and your silence, before and after you speak, carry more weight than a lengthy monologue. Silence also teaches you who truly respects you. Those who are used to crossing your boundaries may resist at first. They may accuse you of being distant or cold. They may push harder, trying to provoke a response. But those who truly care will adjust. They will listen to your silence. They will begin to understand that your peace is not negotiable. Over time, silence reveals truth. It shows you which relationships are based on control, and which are based on respect. It helps you release what no longer serves you, and nurture what truly aligns with your values. In romantic relationships, silence can be a powerful way to maintain individuality. It's easy to lose yourself in love, to become overly enmeshed, to feel responsible for your partner's emotions. Silence helps you return to yourself. It reminds you that you are not just a role in someone else's story. You have your own inner life, your own needs, your own boundary. Taking time for silent reflection, for space and solitude, strengthens the relationship because it strengthens you. You show up with more presence, more clarity, and more emotional balance. You stop reacting out of neediness and start relating from wholeness. In family dynamics, where roles and expectations are often deeply ingrained, silence can break patterns. If you've always been the peacemaker, always giving in or staying quiet to avoid conflict, choosing a different kind of silence A silence of calm refusal can be revolution. It says, I am no longer playing that role. You don't need to argue or convince. You just stop participating in the cycle. That kind of silence is both boundary and liberation. Silence is also deeply healing. In relationships marked by past wounds, trauma or betrayal, silence creates space for emotional processing. It allows pain to surface, not to be dismissed or explained away, but to be seen and eventually released. Sometimes healing happens not through more talking, but through presence, through being with each other in quiet honesty, through allowing the heart to feel what the mind cannot explain. In this way, silence becomes a form of intimacy, one that transcends words. For those who fear losing relationships by setting boundaries, silence offers a gentle yet firm alternative. Instead of dramatic exits or explosive confrontations, silence offers a gradual shift. You start responding less to what drains you, and more to what nourishes. You start giving your energy to people who respect it, and those who cannot respect your silence, your peace, or your boundaries eventually reveal themselves. This isn't loss, it's clarity. Ultimately, silence in relationships is not about creating distance. It's about creating respect. It's about making room for authenticity, for deeper connection, for mutual understanding. It's about honoring your own energy, so that you can show up fully for others. It's about remembering that your peace is valuable, and that you do not need to trade it for approval, attention, or acceptance. The more you practice silence, the more fluent you become in this quiet power. You learn when to speak, when to listen, and when to simply be. And from that place of inner alignment, you build relationships that are rooted not in noise but in truth, creating in silence. Why the quiet ones build the most in a world dominated by noise, constant updates, relentless self-promotion, and the race for visibility. It often seems like those who are loudest are the ones making the most progress. People measure success by how many followers someone has, how often they speak in public, how bold their opinions are, or how well they market themselves. But beneath this surface lies a deeper truth, one that isn't celebrated nearly as much but is just as, if not more powerful. The quiet ones often build the most. The creators who value silence, who stay in the shadows while they work, who guard their energy and direct it inward, tend to produce things of depth, quality, and originality. The world may not always notice them while they're building, but when their work emerges, it speaks so loudly that silence becomes their trademark. Silence is the foundation of deep creation. To make something meaningful, whether it's art, a business, a book, a vision, or a legacy, requires concentration, solitude, and a willingness to dive beneath the noise of the external world. Constant exposure to opinions, reactions, and distractions can scatter the mind. It becomes difficult to hear one's own voice when the volume of others is too high. The quiet ones understand this. They protect their focus like a sacred ritual. They do not explain every move, share every step, or seek validation for each idea. Instead, they go in, they listen, reflect, and patiently shape their vision before sharing it with the world. There's a kind of power in creating without the need for applause. When you are not addicted to being seen, you gain the freedom to truly explore your ideas. You are not bound by trends or public opinion. You don't have to filter your process through the lens of performance. You are free to fail in private, to experiment, to refine, and to evolve. This privacy breeds originality. The pressure to constantly announce progress can dilute it. When no one is watching, you can go deep, and from that depth, something truly remarkable can emerge. Many of the world's greatest thinkers, inventors, and artists were quiet creators. They did not broadcast every step of their journey. They understood that the real work happens away from the spotlight. The idea that productivity equals visibility is a modern illusion. Some of the most significant progress happens in silence. Early mornings alone, late nights fueled by passion, long walks filled with thought, notebooks full of sketches and theories no one else sees. The quiet ones build during these moments. They don't chase attention. They chase clarity. They don't speak about it until it's real, and by the time they do, what they reveal often shifts paradigms. Silence also strengthens creative intuition. The noisy mind jumps from idea to idea, always reacting, always restless, but the quiet mind listens deeply. It notices subtle connections. It catches inspiration not by force, but by receptivity. It's in silence that creative breakthroughs often occur. Not when you're actively trying to figure things out, but when you've quieted the mind enough for the answer to rise on its own. Many creators describe having their best ideas while alone, in nature, in the shower or lying in bed. These are moments of stillness, moments where the external input fades, and the inner voice is finally heard. Another advantage of silence is emotional stability. Creating something meaningful requires you to deal with uncertainty, resistance, and self-doubt. If you are constantly exposing your ideas to external feedback too early, you risk compromising them. The world often judges what it doesn't understand. The most innovative ideas are fragile at first. They need time to grow, to take shape, to become strong enough to withstand criticism. The quiet ones give their ideas that time. They nurture them in silence, away from judgment, and when they do share them, it is from a place of strength, not insecurity. Silence also protects energy. Every interaction, every post, every explanation takes energy. Creators only have so much of it. The more it's spent talking about the work, the less is available to do the work. The quiet ones are mindful of this. They conserve their energy for what matters most. They are not antisocial. They are intentional. They know when to engage and when to retreat. They understand that doing the work is more important than talking about it. Their silence isn't emptiness. It's investment. Every quiet hour is a brick in the foundation they're building. There is also a quiet confidence in those who build without announcing it. They don't need to convince anyone. They don't rely on hype. They trust the process, and this trust shows in the quality of their output. When you're not rushing to prove your worth, you have time to refine it. You're not concerned with being first. You're focused on being right. And while others burn out chasing trends, the quiet ones are steady. They are consistent. They are building something that will last. This way of creating requires patience. In a world that rewards speed, patience is radical, but true mastery takes time. The quiet ones understand that speed is not the same as progress. They are willing to be unknown for a while, even misunderstood. They don't chase overnight success. They focus on daily effort. They build brick by brick, layer by layer, and because of this, their creations are often more durable, more thoughtful, and more authentic. Silence also fosters independence. When you're not constantly seeking input or approval, you learn to trust your own judgment. You become your own advisor, your own motivator, your own critic. This doesn't mean you ignore feedback, but you no longer rely on it to move forward. You learn to validate yourself. This self-reliance is powerful. It gives you the courage to follow your own path, even if no one else sees it yet. And when your work does emerge, it is a true reflection of your vision, not a collage of other people's expectations. The quiet ones also tend to be more observant. They notice patterns, behaviors, and opportunities that others miss. Their silence is not withdrawal. It's attention. They are always watching, learning, absorbing. They listen more than they speak, and because of this, they often make better decisions. They move with intention. They are strategic, not reactive. Their actions are rooted in understanding, not impulse. There's a kind of mystique around the quiet creator. Because they don't reveal everything, people become curious. Their absence becomes presence. Their silence becomes intrigue. And when they do share, people listen. Their words carry weight, because their work carries depth, because it was forged in stillness. The quiet ones do not need to compete for attention. Their work earns it naturally, not because it was marketed loudly, but because it was made with care. In the age of constant noise, choosing silence is a revolutionary act. It's a declaration that you value depth over speed, substance over spectacle. It's an act of rebellion against the idea that louder is better. It's a commitment to quality, to focus, and to inner alignment. The quiet ones may not dominate the feed, but they often dominate the future. They are the architects behind the scenes, the minds shaping the next wave, the builders whose silence echoes louder than applause. So if you are a quiet one, if you prefer working behind closed doors, if you value peace over praise, if you are more focused on building than broadcasting, know that your path is valid. Know that you are not behind. Know that silence is not weakness, but strength. You are not hiding. You are preparing. And when your work is ready, it will speak for itself. Until then, keep creating in silence. Keep trusting the process. Keep building, because what you are making matters. And one day, the world will hear it. Not because you shouted, but because you listened first.